Somebody survives episode 9. Somebody doesn't. And after everything Bakery has done this season, the Chi Season 8 episode 9 might finally hand him the bill nobody thought he'd have to pay. This is Cold Feet. And the title alone is a warning that there's a moment right before something terrible happens in real life where everybody around the situation can feel it coming except the person standing in the middle of it. That's exactly where Bakery is right now, heading into the Chi Season 8, episode 9. He thinks he's got a plan. He thinks Chicago is behind him. He thinks Atlanta is going to be some kind of clean slate. But anybody who's been paying attention to this season knows plans like that rarely survive contact with the people he's left behind. And this episode is titled Cold Feet, for a reason that goes way deeper than just one storyline. Let's start with what we actually know. The official episode description tells us tension is going to boil over because of a decision Bakery makes, one that the show itself describes as putting his life and his future on the line. That's not casual wording. Shows don't use language like that unless they want the audience bracing for something. And when you pair that description with everything we've watched build over the last several episodes, it starts painting a picture that should worry anybody who's been rooting for this man to actually get out clean. Because here's the thing about Bakery that a lot of viewers have been saying in the comments for weeks now. He's been moving like a man who thinks the past just quietly disappears if you ignore it long enough. That's not how it works. Not in real life, and definitely not in this show. Tiffany already told him flat out that she's not taking the fall by herself. That wasn't a throwaway line. That was a warning shot. And the scary part is, Bakery didn't seem to take it seriously. When Len asked him directly what happens if Tiffany decides to protect herself at his expense, he brushed it off like he had it handled. People who actually have things handled don't need to say it out loud that many times. So now we sit here going into episode 9 with a version of Bakery who genuinely believes he can walk into Atlanta and leave Chicago's consequences behind him. But consequences don't work on a plane ticket. They work on unfinished business, and Bakery has a mountain of it. Tiffany is out there with a weapon and a stated willingness to use it if she feels cornered. Corey is the one who fed information to Detective Tucson in the first place, which means somebody in that circle already broke trust once. And broken trust in this world tends to escalate, not resolve itself quietly. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond just one character. The show has been very deliberate about telling us that nobody is safe heading into these final episodes. That's a phrase producers use when they want you anxious about characters you've followed for multiple seasons. And it's not an accident that it's being repeated right as Bakery's storyline reaches a boiling point. If the show wanted us relaxed about his outcome, they wouldn't be building an episode around the phrase Cold Feet, a title that works two ways. It could mean somebody getting nervous about a plan and backing out right before it's too late to save themselves. Or it could be a much darker reference entirely, one that fans in certain corners of social media have already started speculating about, given how this franchise has handled body disposal storylines before. While Bakery's situation carries the most obvious danger, he's not the only person whose world is about to shift hard in this episode. Emmett has been carrying something heavy for a while now, something that's clearly been eating at him in every scene he's shared with his father this season. The official description confirms he's finally going to open up to Kesha about whatever's been weighing on him. And if you've followed his arc closely, there's really only one thing that fits that description. This is almost certainly about what actually happened involving Nuck. And if that's the case, Kesha is about to learn something that changes how she sees the people closest to her. What makes this moment interesting isn't just the reveal itself, it's the timing. Emmett has grown up in front of us over the course of this entire series. He's not the same impulsive kid we met seasons ago. So watching him choose honesty, even knowing it could cost him Kesha's trust, says something about where his character has landed emotionally. But growth doesn't guarantee forgiveness. Kesha finding out the truth doesn't automatically mean she reacts with understanding. People who feel betrayed by someone they trusted don't always respond the way we hope. And that uncertainty is exactly what's going to keep viewers glued to that particular storyline. There's also a quieter thread running through this episode involving Reg, and it deserves more attention than it usually gets. After everything Reg has survived this season, legally and personally, the preview images show him spending time with his brothers, looking through old family photos, trying to rebuild something that's been fractured for a long time. On the surface, that looks like healing. But we also know Candace still has Alicia's red coat sitting out there as unresolved evidence, and Detective Tucson hasn't stopped working. She's just been busy pointed in another direction. The moment her attention shifts back, Reg's fragile peace could be the next thing to collapse. That's the uncomfortable truth about this season. Nobody's calm moments are actually safe. They're just delayed. If episode 9 is really building toward a moment where someone doesn't make it out, then Tiffany deserves a much closer look than most people are giving her right now. She said in plain words that she isn't going to take the fall alone for what happened to Nuck. That's not a woman bluffing. That's someone laying out a plan before she executes it. And the fact that she's already been shown holding a weapon heading into this episode tells you she's not just talking anymore, she's preparing. The real question isn't whether Tiffany is dangerous right now. It's who she's decided is the safest person to point that danger at. Think about her position for a second. She dropped Nuck off, and now she's carrying that weight completely alone while everyone around her moves on with their own lives like nothing happened. Bakery is planning an exit to Atlanta. Victor is still in the picture, oblivious to how close this could get to him. And Corey, the same person who handed Detective Tucson the information that started this entire investigation into Nuck's disappearance, is walking around like his part in this is finished. It isn't. Tiffany doesn't strike anyone as the type of person who forgives being set up, even indirectly. If she connects the dots on how Detective Tucson got onto her, Corey becomes an obvious target for whatever she does next. But there's a version of this where Tiffany doesn't go after Corey at all, and honestly, it's the more chilling possibility. What if the person she's decided to silence is someone even closer to her? Someone who's underestimated exactly how far she's willing to go. Bakery has spent this entire season acting like Tiffany is a loose end he can manage from a distance. That kind of arrogance tends to be the exact thing that gets a character caught off guard in this show. He's so focused on getting out of Chicago clean that he might not be watching the one person who actually has motive, opportunity, and a weapon already in her hand. Meanwhile, Detective Tucson isn't slowing down, and her investigation is about to intersect with Tiffany's storyline in a way that could blow this entire situation wide open. Based on what's been teased, she's had a conversation with a judge that appears to be about securing a warrant, and everything points to that warrant targeting Tiffany's home. If law enforcement gets inside that apartment before Tiffany has the chance to clean up whatever evidence exists, this stops being a slow-burn mystery and becomes an immediate crisis. That's the kind of moment that can end a season-long storyline in a single scene. And it raises a real question worth sitting with. Does Tiffany get arrested before she has the chance to act on whatever she's planning, or does she move first and make sure there's nothing left for Detective Tucson to find? Now, let's shift over to Jake, because his storyline this episode carries a very different kind of tension, one that's emotional instead of criminal, but no less important. He's reportedly throwing another party, which on its own might sound like a lighter break from all this heaviness. But knowing this show, a party is rarely just a party. It's usually a setup for conflict, confrontation, or a moment where buried feelings surface in front of people who weren't supposed to see them. And based on the preview material, there's already friction brewing between Jake and Desiree. She's telling him he needs time to grieve, and his response makes it clear he doesn't want to be told what he needs. That's not a small disagreement. That's two people who care about each other completely misreading how the other one processes pain. And that kind of miscommunication tends to boil over in social settings, not private ones. There's also something worth noting about Papa's presence alongside Jake throughout this episode. Their friendship has quietly been one of the more grounded relationships this season. But even grounded relationships get tested when one person is spiraling and doesn't want to admit it. If Jake is using this party as a distraction from grief rather than an actual celebration, Papa may be the one person close enough to notice before things go too far. Whether he says something or lets it play out is going to say a lot about where their dynamic stands heading into the finale. Then there's the quieter, more hopeful thread involving Darnell, Riley, and Rashad. Based on everything set up in the previous episode, this looks like the moment Darnell finally follows through on giving Rashad the house they discussed. If that happens, it's one of the only genuinely uplifting moments this season has offered, a reminder that not every storyline in this show has to end in heartbreak. But even here, timing matters. Good news landing in the middle of an episode otherwise built around danger and betrayal can sometimes be the calm before something else entirely. And that brings us back to the bigger picture forming around this entire episode. Every storyline, whether it's Bakery heading toward Atlanta, Tiffany preparing to protect herself at any cost, Detective Tucson closing in with a potential warrant, or Emmett finally telling Kesha the truth, is converging at the same moment in the timeline. That's not a coincidence. That's a show setting up its second-to-last episode to answer the biggest question hanging over this entire season. Somebody's story is about to change permanently, and the pieces are all lining up at once for a reason. By the time we get to the final stretch of this episode, the show has to answer the question it's been dangling since the season description first dropped. Who actually has cold feet, and what does that mean for how this all plays out? There are really two ways to read that title, and both of them make sense depending on which character you're watching. It could be about someone getting nervous right before doing something they know is wrong, backing out at the last second because their conscience finally catches up to them. Or it could be something far more permanent, the kind of phrase the show has used before as a quiet, almost cruel piece of foreshadowing. Given everything building around Bakery, Tiffany, and the unresolved question of who dies before the series ends, it wouldn't be surprising if the title is doing double duty on purpose. Let's talk honestly about Bakery's odds here, because at this point in the season, he's carrying more unresolved danger than almost anyone else on the show. He's ignored warnings from Len. He's underestimated Tiffany's willingness to protect herself. And he's operating under the assumption that distance equals safety, that if he just gets to Atlanta, whatever happened in Chicago stays in Chicago. But shows like this one rarely let characters outrun their choices that easily. If Bakery makes it out of this episode alive, it likely won't be because he was careful. It'll be because someone else decided to spare him, and that's a very different kind of survival, one built on someone else's mercy rather than his own planning. And that's what makes Tiffany's storyline so important heading into whatever happens next. She's not a background threat anymore. She's positioned herself as someone with motive, method, and a stated willingness to act. If she does make a move, whether it's against Corey for exposing her or against Bakery for underestimating her, the fallout is going to ripple through nearly every relationship this show has spent seasons building. Kesha finding out what actually happened to Nuck isn't just going to be an emotional gut punch. It's going to force her to reevaluate every person she's trusted, including Emmett, who chose honesty at what might be the worst possible time for everyone involved. That's really the emotional core sitting underneath all of this. Emmett didn't have to tell Kesha the truth. He could have kept carrying that weight quietly, the same way Bakery has been trying to outrun his own mistakes. But he didn't. He chose to be honest, even knowing it might cost him the one relationship he's worked hardest to protect this season. That says something about how far his character has come, and it's worth remembering that growth in this show almost never comes without a price attached to it. Kesha's reaction, whatever it ends up being, isn't going to erase the fact that Emmett finally did the harder thing. Sometimes the right choice still hurts, and this show has never shied away from showing that honestly. Reg's storyline carries a similar kind of bittersweet weight. Watching him sit with his brothers, going through old family photos, trying to rebuild something broken, feels like one of the only genuinely hopeful threads left this season. But hope in this show has always come with an asterisk. Candace still has that red coat. Detective Tucson hasn't stopped working. She's just been pointed somewhere else for now. The moment her focus shifts back toward Reg, everything he's rebuilt could be at risk again. That's the uncomfortable truth this entire season keeps circling back to. Peace here is rarely permanent. It's just borrowed time until the next storm finds its way back around. And then there's Rashad, Darnell, and Riley, a storyline that might end up being the emotional anchor of this whole episode. If Darnell really does follow through on giving Rashad that house, it's more than just a plot point. It's a rare moment where loyalty and sacrifice actually pay off instead of leading to heartbreak. In a season that's been defined by secrets, betrayal, and people paying for choices they made months ago, watching someone receive something built purely out of love and consistency might be exactly the kind of moment viewers need before the finale takes everything apart again. Because make no mistake, that's exactly what's coming. Episode 10 is supposed to close this series out for good, and everything happening in Episode 9 feels like it's setting the stage for either a celebration or a tragedy, possibly both at the same time. Bakery's fate, Tiffany's next move, Kesha's reaction to the truth, Reg's fragile peace, all of it is converging at once. And this show has never been shy about letting more than one storyline collapse in the same breath. At the end of the day, that's what makes this series so hard to look away from. It's never just been about crime or drama for the sake of shock value. It's been about people trying to outrun their own choices, trying to protect the people they love while still carrying secrets that eventually catch up to them. Whether Bakery survives, whether Tiffany finally gets caught, whether Kesha forgives Amit, none of it is guaranteed, and that uncertainty is exactly why this finale stretch feels so heavy heading in. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Bakery makes it out of this episode? Or is this finally where his choices catch up to him for good? Do you think Tiffany turns that gun on Corey? Or is Bakery the one who should really be watching his back? Drop your predictions in the comments, because I want to see how everyone thinks this plays out before the episode actually airs. If this breakdown helped you get ready for episode 9, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. We've got one episode left after this, and it's about to get heavy. I'll see you in the next video.